The second lesson also comes from Matthew. Jesus said, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often I have desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" As Jesus came out of the temple and was going away, his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. Then he asked them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I tell you, not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." This is God's word. May God add to our hearing his blessing that we may gain deeper understanding. I want to tell you about Muhammad. Muhammad is the director of the Olive Program for the YMCA in Beit Sahur. Beit Sahur is a Palestinian town adjacent to Bethlehem. And they have a YMCA that has many programs, and one of the programs is the Olive Program that includes the planting in February and the picking in October. And as you know, we've been now to both. We've taken groups from Covenant to both events. And as you know, we just got back from the picking portion of that. Now, Muhammad is somewhere around 30 years old, a very bright and articulate young man who does an excellent job of overseeing the Olive Program both times a year. Now, because I've known him now since the trip before, and he really connected with my millennial-age daughter, Tina, as well, and so I had a lot of conversation with Muhammad, and he kind of sometimes would get informal and share things that he wouldn't normally share with people on a group that he didn't know very well. And he got to saying one day when we were visiting that when he was a little Palestinian boy growing up in a refugee camp in Bethlehem, he and his buddies, as little boys, as Palestinian little boys do, would throw stones. First they'd throw stones at each other, but then they got old enough and bold enough where they threw stones at Israeli army jeeps because they represented the occupiers, and so they threw stones at the jeeps. And most often they'd get arrested. Sometimes they'd get arrested outright after throwing a stone and getting caught. And other times they'd get arrested because they would get away, but their buddies would rat on them. And they were very forgiving of that because they realized when the soldiers got a hold of you and they were very rough, you would give up everything. And so the buddies would tell them that Muhammad went and threw stones with them, and the Israeli military always shows up between midnight and 5 a.m. Storms the house, wakes up the whole family, kids screaming, parents panicked, and they grab this kid and they put cuffs on him, they take him out, and he can be gone for as long as 6 months without due process. Well, Muhammad said that they did this, part of the deal, until he says you become a young adult. And then you realize you got to do something with your life. And Palestinian culture is very keen on education. So young people get an education, they seek to get degrees. And Muhammad got a job with the YMCA, first working with the Olive Program, and then eventually moving up to where he was the director of the Olive Program because he's very gifted. Muhammad is very gifted at being the go-between between Palestinian farmers who simultaneously fear and loathe the Israeli military and Israeli military commanders. And Muhammad does the negotiating between them to make sure that this work can get done in the fields. And I've seen him at work. He's very gifted. He has the respect of both sides. He's a natural-born negotiator. Well, it so happened, as you know, while we were there was proclaimed a day of anger in the West Bank, where in all Palestinian cities, the shops closed down, it was a general strike, and they did nonviolent demonstrations in the streets. Now, when you see pictures of their nonviolent demonstrations, what you're going to see is a fire in the middle of the street, because they always light fires on fire. They always do that, and there's black smoke going up, and it's because they lit a tire on fire, big tires, in the middle of the street, and that's part of the demonstration. But then when the Israeli military show up to break up the demonstration, which starts out in a nonviolent way, it quickly gets out of hand after they show up. And so Mohamed had one of these friends, Ahmed. Ahmed grew up with him in the refugee camp and got an education, got a college degree, got a very good job, moved away from the Bethlehem area for his job. And it just so happened he came home while we were there, just to visit friends, family. And they were having a demonstration in the heart of Bethlehem, and he decided, well, what the heck, I'll go. And he went. And it was a fateful decision. The demonstration, the Israeli military showed up, the demonstration got out of hand, rubber bullets flew, he took one point-blank range in the chest and died. They had a 3-day funeral for Ahmed. One moment of deciding to go to a demonstration, and his life was over. That's where we just spent the last couple of weeks. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. The first thing you notice when you're in Palestine is that there are rocks everywhere. There are rocks in the olive fields. There are rocks in the streets. There are rocks on the grassy green hills of Galilee. Ancient Palestine is a land of stones. And it's easy to bend over and pick up stones. And it's easy to throw one. It was easy for the elders of the synagogue to pick up stones to throw at a woman who had committed adultery until Jesus stopped them. When you see all the stones, you know how expedient that was. Just bend over, pick up a stone, and hurl the stone at her. But stones were not just reserved for adulteresses. Just like Israeli jeeps, young boys threw them at Roman chariots. Anyone who occupies your land deserves a stone in their estimation. Even prophets who dared to speak God's truth to their own people caught stones from those who were angry at them. What Jesus demonstrated, time and time again, however, was that throwing stones is not a righteous act. Throwing stones is an act of exasperation, is an act of desperation. Throwing stones is an act of anger. It's an act of confusion and lostness, and also one of convenience. Your weapon of choice lies at your feet. Can't help but remember that after the mighty Israeli army cowered at the sight of a mighty Philistine warrior by the name of Goliath, a teenager named David picked up a stone and hurled it at him. But rocks and stones are just not for throwing. Rocks and stones are what holy sites are made of. Jesus was born in a stone cave in Bethlehem. When you go into the Church of the Nativity and you see the place and the altars built over it, you reach down and you can touch the stone floor of the cave where they say Jesus was born. When you go to Jerusalem to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and you go up into that room where it's the top of Mount Calvary, and you can see under the altar a glass cover over the stones, the rocks, where the foot of the cross was anchored. When you go down the steps from that room, you see the stone slab where they say that Jesus was laid after he's taken down from the cross. And you can go to the slab, and it's hard to get to it because there's so many people reaching in, wanting to touch the stone and weeping over it. When you go to the Mount of Temptation, which we did this time, the last group didn't, sorry guys, we went to the top. You take a cable car way up the mountain. And then when you get to the mountain, you think you're there, and then you got to walk upstairs to the very top where the monastery is. And then you get in the monastery, you still got to take stairs up. I mean, we were tired. And we got to the top, and that at the top room in the monastery is where the rock is, under an altar. The rock is that's where Jesus was tempted by the devil, and it's the rock upon which he prayed furiously, and you can touch the rock. You go to Cana of Galilee, where Jesus changed the water into wine, and you go down in the basement of that church, and there's a huge, huge stone container where the water was kept. These weren't little jars of water Jesus turned into wine. Huge stone containers. You can't touch that because they put plexiglass all around it. But stones and rocks at virtually every holy site you go visit. Ancient Palestine, the land of stones. And yet, after you go to all these sites many times, and then you go pick olives and you relate with people in their lives and their struggles, and you share with them part of their lives for just a little while, what you come to realize is rocks aren't holy. People are. Jesus knew this. He went to the Sea of Galilee, to that place that Don spoke of so well that we are back at this time, to the Church of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. That's about people. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. We saw these people. Israeli Jew, Palestinian Christian, Palestinian Muslim. We saw them all. We talked to them all. We heard their stories. They're not stones or rocks. They're people. And they're holy. People who want peace. People who want to watch their children grow up in peace. People who desperately need to know that God is close. People who want to plant trees and harvest crops without intimidation by soldiers. You know, on these trips, I always come home tired. Jet lag is getting worse as I get older. And I tell myself, and I did this time too, I always tell myself when I come back now, this was the last time, I'm not going to do this again. And I would say that if it was to go back and see rocks, it would have been my last time a long time ago. But I go to the holy. And friends, it ain't rocks. So let me tell you a story. I'll close with this story. The group went on tour to Old City, Jerusalem one day, and we were told that it would be a lot of walking and a lot of fast walking, and Nora didn't think she was up to it. So we were outside the Old City, Jerusalem, and one of the people who was in charge came up and said, you can go just a block up. There's a Palestinian Hotel Jerusalem. There's an outdoor cafe that is so nice. I said, well, that sounds good. And so we went. Nora and I walked the block. We found the hotel. We went. It was a beautiful outdoor cafe, shaded, nice. We sat down. She ordered tea. I ordered coffee. We sat and we were going to visit. Now, they're going to be touring Old City Jerusalem for 3 hours. So Nora and I just started visiting, and we drank our coffee. And I noticed the Palestinian waiter, his name is Rafit, because I went and asked him. And finally, I noticed Rafit kept looking at us saying, what are you people doing here? You're here for a long time. And so I went and told him. I said, Rafit, we're here. Our group is touring Old City Jerusalem. And the first thing he said was, oh, it's not a good time to go in there. But then I said, we're here to pick olives for Palestinian farmers in different places in the West Bank, but this is a tour day to Old City Jerusalem. And Nora and I just want to sit here and wait for our group. Is that okay? And he just smiled at me and he said, sit there as long as you want. I'll take good care of you. And Nora and I had a holy time for 3 hours talking about our lives, didn't we? It was wonderful. I got to know things about Nora that you pay me, I'll tell you. And then at the end, when we had to go back and find the group, Nora gave the money to pay for the coffee and tea, and I brought it up to Rafit and paid him, and then came back and told Nora, you gave him a good tip, by the way. He deserved it. Because you see, Rafit isn't a rock either. He's also holy. Amen.